Okay, we're going to actually complete this Maimer, Mitzvah Shem, tonight. So welcome those who come for the first time. So at least you get the point. The point that the Rebbe made in this Maimer, which is quite a dramatic one, is that the highest level of serving Hashem is actually doing mitzvahs. And doing a mitzvah is higher than even having Mesiras Nefesh, having complete self-sacrifice for Hashem. Even though we would expect that to be willing to die for Hashem, there could be nothing greater and higher than that, to give your life for Hashem, or to completely dedicate yourself, body and soul, to Hashem. What could be higher than that? Whereas doing a mitzvah, what is doing a mitzvah? We do it every day, mitzvahs, even if we don't mean to. What do we do by doing a mitzvah? You put a coin in a pushka, you did a mitzvah. You lit a candle, you did a mitzvah. Big deal. Like that's what's the big deal of that? So the Rebbe has proved at length in this Maimer that is a big deal. Not just it's a big deal, it's a bigger deal than Mesiras Nefesh. Why? Because at the end of the day, Mesiras Nefesh, while it is a form of bittul, of self-nullification to Hashem, but it's not complete and utter bittul. Because Mesiras Nefesh comes from you, whereas a mitzvah comes totally from Hashem. What does it mean Mesiras Nefesh comes from you? At the end of the day, the reason why Jews have been willing to die for Hashem is because our soul cannot be disconnected from Hashem. Our neshama naturally gravitates towards closeness with Hashem, has an aversion to any disconnection from Hashem, and so its natural state, the natural state of the soul, is to be connected to Hashem. So it makes no sense for the neshama to disconnect from Hashem. What the neshama wants is to connect to Hashem. So therefore, when a person gives their life up for Hashem, why do they do it? Why?
Because their soul's natural.
That's their nature. It's a natural thing to do for the neshama. Whereas when it comes to doing a mitzvah, why did you do a mitzvah? Why would anyone do a mitzvah? Why would anyone light Shabbos candles at a certain time? Or shake a branch in 6 directions? Why do people do that? Because the neshama naturally does these things? Neshamas shake branches? Neshamas light candles? No. The only reason you do a mitzvah is because Hashem said to do it. And that's it. It's totally coming from Hashem. It's something that you never would have come up with yourself, you never would have thought of, even your neshama never would have thought of it. And the fact you're doing it is totally because of Hashem. So therefore, even though it's much less dramatic to shake a lulav than to die for Hashem, but as far as the bittul, as far as you putting yourself aside, excuse me, it's more, when Hashem tells you to do a mitzvah, it's coming from Him. When you have Mesiras Nefesh, it's coming from you. And so therefore, the most powerful way we serve Hashem is simply by doing a mitzvah. Meaning, doing something that we would not have thought of ourselves, but we're doing it for Hashem. So this, the Rebbe says, is also why it says in the Aseres HaDibros, Anochi Hashem Elokecha asher hotziusecha me'eretz Mitzrayim. I'm the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Mitzrayim. Why is that the introduction to the Aseres HaDibros? I'm the Lord your God, I'm Hashem who took you out of Mitzrayim. Is that the greatest thing Hashem did? It could have been, I'm the Lord your God who created heaven and earth. Wouldn't that be a better description of Hashem? But no, because the point it's making is that I'm giving you mitzvahs. Aseres HaDibros. I'm starting to give you the mitzvahs. And you should know that the reason I'm giving you the mitzvahs is not because you asked for them, is because I took you out of Mitzrayim. I made you into my servants. It came from me, not from you. The relationship we have with Hashem came from Him, not from us. And so because it's coming from Him, not from us, that makes it infinitely higher. This is completely counterintuitive. You would think that a greater relationship is one that you chose, that you want, that you sought out. Whereas a relationship that was imposed on you from outside, it's less you, so it's less of a relationship. That may be true in certain circumstances. When it comes to a relationship with Hashem, the point of the relationship is to make it Him and not you, to put yourself aside for Him. So therefore, where is it greater? When it comes from Him, not from you. Whereas when it comes from you, it's yours. So therefore, it's limited to being human, limited to the limitations of a human being. And so the Rebbe said, therefore, these days, when we're in Golus, the very end and the darkest time of Golus, there are certain challenges that we face that we couldn't face on our own. The only way we're able to overcome the challenges of this time in history is because Hashem has given us the power to. Because He made us into His servants. So therefore we serve Him on His terms, not on our terms. With His power, not our own power. We have a power that's beyond ourselves.
If doing mitzvahs is solely coming from Hashem, how do we explain there are different levels of observance?
You mean everyone should be keeping it the same?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not, the point here is not that we're puppets. It's not that you're not doing the mitzvah, Hashem's doing the mitzvah. No, you have to do the mitzvah. And you have to do it. And you have to use your free choice and your personality. You have to do it. But the point is that the mitzvah itself, you never thought of. It wasn't your idea. It's Hashem's idea. You doing the mitzvah, what are you doing? You're putting yourself aside for Hashem. The more you put yourself aside, the more mitzvah you'll do. The less ego, the less you're stuck in your ego, the more room you have for mitzvah.
How is that different from Mr. Nefesh? Because Mr. Nefesh is a form when you gave over yourself.
Right, but that is in keeping with your personality. You're the type to have Mesiras Nefesh. That makes sense. That fits into who you are. Why? Because your neshama naturally wants to be connected to Hashem. The neshama never wanted to be in this world in the first place. The neshama wants to be connected to Hashem. What's blocking the neshama from being connected to Hashem? What's the biggest obstacle for the neshama? What's the biggest problem for the neshama? Your body. Meaning being alive in this world. That's the biggest obstacle for the neshama. So if you would ask your neshama right now, what do you want? What would the neshama say? I want to get out of here. I want to be connected to Hashem. I have no interest in this world. That's what it says in the Zohar. That's why we shackle when we daven. Why we shake back and forth. The Zohar says because our neshama is constantly flickering upwards to try and jump out of the body, like a flame that's flickering on the wick because it's trying to jump off the wick. So our neshama is always trying to just get out of here. So when we start davening, which is when we start giving the neshama a bit of attention, it starts to get going, and so we automatically, subconsciously start flickering and moving around. So that's the neshama's nature. If the neshama would be left to its devices, it would leave this world. That's what happened to Nadav and Avihu. That they left this world because they followed their neshama's desire. It wasn't a punishment, it was a natural consequence. If you don't hold yourself down, you fly away. So that's wrong, because that's what you want, not what Hashem wants. What Hashem wants is you to be in this world and to do mitzvahs, but that came from Him, that's not our idea.
Everything that we do is a combination of body and soul. So on a soul level, it might be natural for us to want to give up our lives for Hashem, but that's not, we're still people. I don't think it's natural for us to want to die for the name of Hashem.
Correct. So
I think it's easier to do a mitzvah.
It is, but that's because we're not in that position.
Yeah, so until you're in that position, you wouldn't know.
No, it's not true. You do know.
How can you know?
You do know that if you were in that position, your nature would be to go for it. That is the soul's nature. You might convince yourself to go against your nature, that you have free choice. And like you said, we are a body and a soul, so the body might get in the way and say, let's do something else, let's survive. Okay, the body could interrupt, but that's going against your nature. That's the soul's nature, is to want to leave. So it's not saying it's easier to have Mesiras Nefesh than to do a mitzvah. It's not which is one is easier. It's saying which is a more powerful statement of our connection with Hashem. And in an amazing way, Mesiras Nefesh is actually talking. That's not a statement about your connection with Hashem. That's a statement about your soul's nature. It naturally wants to leave. But a mitzvah is you totally putting yourself aside for Hashem. This will become a bit clearer we're going to look into one of the haras, one of the notes at the bottom of the page. On this section at the moment that we just discussed, the Rebbe has a very interesting note at the bottom of the page. We're on page Reish Pei Vav. So there's only one page, the last two pages we're up to. So on the right side there, note 32 at the very bottom of the page is what we're going to have a look at now. This will make the idea a bit clearer. Does everyone have? Yeah? Or there's another one there on the table. This is another one if someone's written on it. Okay. Note 32. Lahar Materis Baal Shem Tov. So the Rebbe points out there's a teaching from the Baal Shem Tov. In brackets, Kesser Shem Tov, Eitzos Kahasim and Mem Zayim. It's found in the Sefer Kesser Shem Tov, which is a collection of teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. So the Baal Shem Tov says that Tam Shekafal HaKadosh Baruch Leim Harki Gigis. Why is it that Hashem at Mount Sinai, at the giving of the Torah, Hashem took the mountain and put it over their heads? You know what it says in the Gemara? That at Har Sinai, when the Yidden were about to receive the Torah, Hashem took Mount Sinai, turned it upside down, put it over their heads, and said, if you accept the Torah, good. If not, this will be your burial place. I'll drop the mountain on you.
Talking metaphorically, not literally yet.
This is what the Gemara says. Chassidus explains that it doesn't mean literal mountains in the air.
Because that would be like bigger than splitting the sea. Like I would consider that a big miracle.
Well, if you would consider a miracle, then
It must be.
yeah, it would be. But I mean, it happened. This is what happened. The Alter Rebbe explains it in an interesting way. We'll talk about it in a minute. The Gemara says that Hashem took the mountain, put it over their heads, and said, "Accept the Torah or else." He's forced us into accepting the Torah, and of course, we accepted. The Alter Rebbe explains that what does it actually mean, a mountain over their head? So this is in Torah. The Alter Rebbe explains that all geography has a spiritual meaning. The fact that the earth has ups and downs, hills and valleys, they all have a spiritual significance. What does a mountain represent? It represents love. It represents the earth, the physical world, reaching out towards Hashem. Right? Like the earth, instead of just being flat, there's this all of a sudden this big bump, this mountain reaching up. That represents the earth reaching out with love and yearning towards Hashem. That's what a mountain represents. So Alter Rebbe says, so what's an upside down mountain?
Reaching towards the people.
Who?
And as well.
Who's reaching?
God.
An upside down mountain is Hashem reaching down to us, yearning, showing His love to us. Very good. So how did Hashem force us to accept the Torah? By revealing how much He loves us. Because Alter Rebbe says, when somebody shows you love, real love, you cannot help but reciprocate. You're forced into loving them back. When somebody shows you sincere love, you can't help but loving them back. And so Hashem forced us into accepting the Torah. How? By revealing how much He loves us. We couldn't say no. You can't say no when somebody really, really loves you. Truly loves you.
So how do you know if you really love someone?
I don't know.
It's great. It's really
What, you mean, maybe they just forced you to love them?
yeah.
By showing you
What if they
sincere
showed you
love?
sincere love and then
So what's wrong? You should love every Jew. It doesn't mean you have to marry them. This is not a dating technique. Like, just reveal your true love to someone and they can't say no. Can't say no means they can't say no. They have to love you back. Doesn't mean they have to marry you. So Hashem. But either way, that's how the Alter Rebbe explains it. So yeah, it's not a mountain in the air over our head. It's not a threat, like a vicious threat. That's how Chassidus, makes it into a love story. But either way, the point is we were forced to accept the Torah. It was forced upon us. It was not choice. That's what the Gemara says. Now, the Baal Shem Tov asks a very simple question, which is actually asked already by Tosfos, the commentary on the Gemara. Af she'amru, second last line on the page. Af she'amru ma'atzmum na'aseh v'nishma. Hang on a minute. The Jewish people had already said na'aseh v'nishma willingly. We all know the story that Hashem offered the Torah to all the nations, and they asked what's in it, and they didn't like what was in it. Whereas the Jewish people were offered, and they said na'aseh v'nishma. Whatever it is, we will do it. Before we've even heard, we accept it. So how do you reconcile the Gemara saying that we were forced to accept the Torah with what it says clearly that the Torah was offered to us and we accepted it before knowing what's in it? We accepted it willingly. Na'aseh v'nishma is a willing statement that we want it. Yeah, you get the question. It's a clear contradiction. So Tosfos asked the question, he answers it differently, but the Baal Shem Tov answers the question like this, the very bottom line on the page. The Baal Shem Tov answers, L'lamed shegam k'she'en choshek b'Torah v'avodas Hashem. This was to teach us that even when we have no desire, we're not in the mood of keeping Torah and of serving Hashem, nevertheless, you're not free to stop. You can't get out of it. So when you're not in the mood to do a mitzvah, when you're not in the mood to keep Torah or to learn Torah, okay, fine, you're not in the mood, that's okay. So do it against your will, against your mood. The Yidma, and you should imagine, Kamoi, the next page, you should imagine you're being forced to do it. It's not me doing it willingly, I'm being forced to do it. And I have to do it. So what's the Baal Shem Tov saying? An amazing idea. That, of course we accepted the Torah willingly. That was one part of our relationship with Hashem that is expressed in Torah, is that we willingly accepted to do Torah mitzvahs. But what about when you're not in the mood? What about when you're not willing? When you're not interested? What about when you wake up one morning and you're completely uninspired and you have no desire whatsoever to daven? What do you do then? You're not willing anymore. So for that, the Baal Shem Tov says, we were forced into it as well. Yeah, okay, we accepted it, but we were also forced into it. Which means that you've got to do it anyway. You just have to get on the horse and do it. You have to serve Hashem because you have to. So it wasn't enough that we accepted upon ourselves willingly, because that would imply that willingness is the basis of our acceptance. So we were forced into it as well to say that even if you're not willing and you're not in the mood and you're not interested, you've got to do it. You just got to keep going. So in other words, the Baal Shem Tov teaches here an amazing thing, that at the very beginning, when the Torah was given to us, it was understood that we're not always going to be in the mood. That you're going to have certain days, weeks, months, where you're uninspired, and nevertheless, you've got to do it anyway. Like there's a mountain over your head. And this is true because any relationship, any loving relationship, is going to be fickle. By definition. The excitement and emotion, by its very nature, is unpredictable, is unreliable, and it comes and goes. And so any relationship that is based on emotion is short-lived. It's not going to last forever. It can't, because no emotion lasts forever. If an emotion does last forever, it's not an emotion. Like that's its definition. The definition of an emotion is it comes and goes. It appears, with strength and passion and excitement, and then it fizzles, and then it comes back.
So wouldn't you say the same thing with Mesiras Nefesh? How can that be? You said that it's personality based, right? But I think Mesiras Nefesh seems quite emotionally driven. I mean, not even if it was pure emotion. I mean, not even like sacrificing like Hashem, jumping into the ocean and saving someone's life.
Yeah.
It's pure emotion. There's
But
nothing
that's the point. That's exactly the point. It's emotion, and therefore emotion is you.
But you said it can come and go, so you feel bouts of Mesiras Nefesh randomly, but
Right.
it's not
But-
something constant.
But what arouses it is when you're in the situation when you need it. When you need Mesiras Nefesh, it comes. But an emotion, if an emotion is always there, it's floundering, it's constantly there, that's not an emotion. That's a fixation. It's not real. It's not a real feeling. Because real feelings come and go. So you can appreciate if a relationship is based on feeling, meaning I'm in the relationship as long as I feel like being in it, as long as I'm excited by it, as long as I'm driven and motivated by the relationship, as long as it feels good, I'm in. So then that relationship has a use-by date. It's not going to last forever because you're going to wake up without feeling. We can wake up without feeling even for people we know we love them. But we don't feel it at the moment. So what do you do if you don't feel love for somebody one day? Leave. Tell them and leave. No?
Why do you leave? You don't leave.
You don't love them anymore. Why would you stay? If you don't love them anymore.
So we need to work at it to arouse that love again.
Yeah. Maybe it won't come. Well, arouse it
Just like a
again.
mountain on
It's
top of your
gone.
head in the morning, you may
Is
like,
it love and emotion?
Yeah.
So it comes and goes, so that's not
So it's
a
gone.
relationship.
so
You stick
Yeah,
it
but
out.
if it goes, you don't necessarily sit there going, oh, it's going to come back, it's fine. You just don't feel that it's
But
there.
you just said it can't be there the whole time. It's an emotion.
Right. Right. So what should you do when the emotion goes? What should you do?
It depends what it gets replaced with. If the emotion goes, it gets replaced with another one. There's plenty of emotion.
Right. So you
Contempt.
love, contempt. So what do you do when love has been replaced with contempt?
So what if it's replaced with something else?
Or nothing? So if your relationship is based on emotion, if that's what it's all about, I'm in love, so then the relationship lasts as long as the love lasts. And if it goes, there's nothing left. But if the relationship is based on something more than love, something beyond love, on commitment to something higher, something bigger than you, so then the fact that the love is gone is an interesting fact, is a predictable fact. It was going to happen eventually. And that doesn't change the reality of the relationship. It's not just love, it's a relationship. And so when that relationship is real, so then it's something deeper than love. The love can come and go, but the relationship is still there. Because you're committed to it. You're committed to something bigger than you. So that's what the Baal Shem Tov here is saying. That Hashem wanted it at Har Sinai, not that our relationship with Him should be based on excitement. That we were inspired to say Nasa v'Nishma. We were so in love. He wanted our relationship to be deeper than that.
Based on fear?
No, based on commitment. That it's not your love that got you into it. It's my love for you that got you into it. It's not just your choice and your feelings that made you a part of this relationship. It came from me. So therefore, apart from Nasa v'Nishma, that wasn't enough. He also forced us. He also put the mountain over our head. To say that when you're not in the mood, you're still in the relationship.
it should generate that feeling of love again?
Yeah, the love will come back because you're in it. Love is blind. Love is a feeling that's in you, and it'll go towards whatever's around at the time. Whatever you think is lovable will be loved. So if you stick to a relationship, so then your love is gone, it'll come back. If you leave it, so then it'll find somebody else.
Are you saying that the love that we have for Hashem is the same type of love, that fleeting love that can just be directed in any which direction, and it's the same love?
Yeah, essentially it's just love. There's love of the Nefesh Elokis, love of Nefesh Muhammad. There's different levels and directions of love, but it's the same. It's the same heart that feels it. There's only one heart that feels the love of the Nefesh Elokis or the love of Nefesh Muhammad. It's one person. So that's the Baal Shem Tov's answer to the question. Now the Rebbe asks a question on the Baal Shem Tov's answer to understand it a bit deeper. Look at the bottom, the notes on the left side, the top line of the left page, Resh Pei Zayin. The Rebbe asks, the Lechura, hang on a minute. This answer of the Baal Shem Tov makes no sense at first glance. That we said Nasa v'Nishma, but that was our feeling of love to Hashem. That wasn't enough. So Hashem had to force us into accepting, so even when we're not in the mood, we'll still be committed. That's what the Baal Shem Tov's answer was. The L'chura, hang on a minute. Armin Rasan Nasa v'Nishma. When they said Nasa v'Nishma, when we said Nasa v'Nishma, what do we mean? What do we mean we will do and we will hear? What were we committing to? What were we accepting upon ourselves? What were we saying Nasa v'Nishma? He's chayvus al kol hazmanim. We were committing ourselves for all time. We were not saying, Hashem, we will do whatever you say, as long as we're still in the mood of it. That's not what Nasa v'Nishma meant. We weren't committing for the time being, while we're in the mood. We were very well aware that now we're inspired, and we knew that sometimes we won't be inspired, but we're committing, we're entering the relationship. Why is Nasa v'Nishma not enough? We're saying we're in it for good. Whatever you say, with the Mesiras Nefesh, with total self-sacrifice, we're giving ourselves over to you completely, whatever may be. That's what Nasa v'Nishma is. Why would we even think that afterwards, later on, after we've already committed ourselves, when we're not in the mood, so we're free? We're not obligated anymore? Do you understand the question?
Yeah, we wouldn't think that.
But that's what the Baal Shem Tov says. You would think that. Therefore, we had to have the mountain over our head. Why do we need the mountain over our head? We said Nasa v'Nishma. We're accepting you, Hashem. We're going to follow you no matter what.
We don't need to be forced.
We don't need to be forced.
But it comes from us.
It could go
We
away.
don't need to be forced, like he said, when we're in the mood, or when I'm in the mood.
But when you commit to something, what does a commitment mean? Why do you ever have to make any commitment? What's the point of a commitment?
You're responsible to do it.
By definition, a commitment means I want to do it now. I might not want to do it tomorrow, but I'm committing to it, so I'll have to do it tomorrow, even when I'm not in the mood. That's what a commitment means. When you sign a contract, when you give your word, what are you doing? You're saying that now I want to do it. Things might change, so I'm committing. That's what commitment means. That's what Nasa v'Nishma meant. We're doing it no matter what.
Is there no guarantee that we won't break the commitment?
So what does? So what does guarantee they won't break it?
The Sirasidel'e, hope from Hashem.
Right.
Oh, fear.
Just so love.
Fear is also an emotion. Fear is just an emotion too.
Endless love.
Yes.
We need endless love.
Reading the wrong
So let's have a look. The Rebbe explains it like this. V'yesh lema bir bazeh. The third line there. This is the explanation. The nasa v'nishma. The commitment made by saying nasa v'nishma. Kivin shi mitzad ha'adam shu mugbal. Being that it is a commitment made by a human being. And a human being is a limited being. A finite, limited being. It might happen that sometimes you are unable to overcome your apathy, your flatness, your uninspiredness, and you can't fulfill your commitment. You can't. Because you're a human being, and human beings are limited, and it might happen that a circumstance will arise where I simply cannot fulfill my commitment that I made. And you're going to tell me, but you committed? Okay, but I committed, and I'm only a human being. A commitment made by a human being is limited to a human being's scope. I didn't foresee every possible scenario that will come out of this. And it didn't really cross my mind that I could end up in a situation where I simply cannot do it. I can't fulfill my commitment. And therefore, being that you could end up in a situation where with your limited human powers you cannot fulfill your commitment, you are free to break your commitment. The onus rachmana patre, because there's a principle in Torah that says onus rachmana patre, that somebody who is who can't help it is exempt. Al-pi Torah, according to Torah law, if you're in a situation where it is impossible for you to fulfill a mitzvah, you're exempt from that mitzvah. Onus, when under duress, by force, against your will, you simply can't keep the mitzvah. It wasn't a choice you made. It wasn't irresponsibility. It wasn't laziness. You're in a situation where you can't do it. So if you can't do it, you're exempt.
What does that mean? You gave us a mimer ages ago about the rabbi who didn't eat the matzah.
Right.
So therefore he didn't partake in the mitzvah of Pesach.
So he was potter. He was exempt from the mitzvah of matzah. He was in Siberia without matzah. So he didn't do anything wrong. You can't say that he didn't do an avera by not eating matzah. That's a perfect example of onus rachmana patre. The guy's in prison camp in Siberia, so he didn't eat matzah. It's not his fault, so he's exempt. It still pained him to be exempt and not do a mitzvah.
Right, so doesn't that exemption release you of that pain, or that...
So it depends what your perspective is. If your perspective is, mitzvahs are my obligation, if I'm not obligated, I didn't do it. So then, fine, you're out of it, so you're off the hook, what do you worry? But if your view is, mitzvahs are Hashem's mission to elevate the world, I couldn't do a mitzvah. So Hashem's mission was less fulfilled. I was not able to further His mission. If the emphasis is His, not yours, so then it pains you that you're exempt. Like the Yidden who created Pesach Sheni. They were in a state of tumah, they were impure, so they couldn't bring Pesach Rishon. If you're tameh, you're exempt. You can't do it, you're exempt. They said, why should we miss out? So that was a good thing.
But they were more forbidden than exempt.
No, not in tumah. Tumah makes the mitzvah doesn't apply to you. You did the right thing by becoming tameh, buried a dead person, but that means you can't bring this. It doesn't apply to you. So again, the Rebbe says here, when you make a commitment, you're a human being. As a human being, your commitment is a human commitment, as far as a human being can commit. So therefore, if you're in a situation where it's impossible for you to fulfill your commitment, you're exempt. Because your commitment didn't cover that. It didn't cover impossible circumstances. It was understood when you said Nasa v'nishma. I'm going to keep mitzvahs no matter what. What do you mean by no matter what? You don't mean no matter what. You mean that on all the predictable, foreseeable, possible scenarios that could be, I'm committing myself. But what if something's impossible? What if you just can't? So then, okay, that doesn't apply.
It could become a bit of a grey area for people. I mean, they may take that.
Okay, but yeah, it has to be impossible. But anyway, that's not the conclusion. Because in the end, we're not just committed to mitzvahs through Nasa v'nishma. So continues the Rebbe, the last line of that note. Through the fact that Hashem put the mountain over our head, He forced us into accepting the Torah. What did that achieve? It meant that Hashem has given us the power. Every single one of us has the power to fulfill a mitzvah even against our will, even when we don't want to, and even when it's impossible. Meaning, there's still cases where it's impossible, like in Siberia there's no matzah. Okay, it's impossible. But as far as your own inner resistance to mitzvahs, that can never be a blockage for you doing mitzvahs. See, every person has within them a natural resistance to do mitzvahs. Guf, nefesh ba'amis, yetzer hara, whatever you call it, but we have something that stops us from doing mitzvahs. Each one of us can think of mitzvahs that we know we're supposed to be doing. We know how to do it, we know how we're supposed to be doing it, and we don't do it. Why? Because there's a natural resistance to mitzvahs that is stopping us. And we have every sophisticated excuse in the world why we can't do this mitzvah, why in our circumstances, and where we are, and on our level, and anyway it's only a stringency and it's not so. We have a whole structure around why we don't do the mitzvah. But the bottom line is there are mitzvahs that we know we should be doing, we don't do it. That's because that's our inner resistance to mitzvahs. So, based on Nasa v'nishma that we said we're going to do with the mitzvahs, okay, but that doesn't apply to when it's impossible, when it's just too hard. I don't have the drive to do it, and I don't have the inner strength to overcome the resistance and do it. So I can't be obligated in such a case because I simply can't do it. I'm not strong enough. If Nasa v'nishma was all there was, then that would be an argument. So Hashem put the mountain over our heads saying, you're not accepting the mitzvahs based on your terms, with your strength. I'm making you accept the mitzvahs. You're accepting the mitzvahs on my terms. You are a limited being that can't foresee every possibility and can't overcome every challenge. I am unlimited, and I'm accepting the mitzvahs for you. I'm making you accept the mitzvahs. It's coming from me. So therefore, there is no circumstance where your inner resistance to mitzvahs is so much that it exempts you, that you can't overcome it. You can always do it. Why? Not because of your human strength, because of the divine strength that I just gave you.
I'm a bit lost on how that divine strength is analogized with the mountain. Like, I get the idea, but I don't get how that proves it. Because this mountain proves that we can overcome any of our limitedness within our inner resistance.
Basically, Hashem asks us if we want to accept the Torah in two ways. One way He asked us politely, and we answered, Nasa v'nishma. Yeah, we accept it. If He would have left it there, so then we'd be obligated to fulfill Torah mitzvahs all the time. Except where it's humanly impossible. Where we have such a strong resistance that we just can't do it. There we could say, well, I accepted it, but only as far as my acceptance goes. So Hashem offered us the Torah a second time. This time not giving us an option, not letting us respond, but forcing us to accept it. Your acceptance is not coming from you, it's coming from me. That's what Kafel Harki Gigas means. He put a mountain over our head, even though we've already said yes. So why did He do this? So your acceptance is not just coming from you, it's coming from me. It's not just a human thing, it's a divine thing. That's what that story brings out.
Sorry, you just said that when it's humanly impossible, and relating that to our resistance is too strong. You said that, like if it was just
Humanly impossible, I don't mean that you're in Russia in a prison with no matzah. Humanly impossible means that
you don't want to do it.
you don't want to do it, you have such a resistance to do it, and you don't have the strength to do it. Like, where are you going to get the inner strength to do this mitzvah from? The answer is, you don't have it, but Hashem gave it to you, so you can.
But Hashem did exempt us for actual human impossibilities.
That's different. When there's external forces that stop you from doing a mitzvah, you're exempt. But internal resistance, there's no such thing. I mean, this has very broad ramifications, and it is it's totally, again, quite counterintuitive. Because we would always think that Nasa v'nishma is much higher than having a mountain put on your head. Like, how can you compare the two? Nasa v'nishma was a beautiful, dramatic moment. A mountain overhead is like force. But it's not true. What's nicer? If somebody does you a favor out of the goodness of their own heart, that you didn't ask them to do it, and they just came up with it and spontaneously did something nice to you. Or you asked them to do it and they did it. What's nicer?
You asked them.
Does it depend on the
Why?
relationship? Does it depend on the relationship?
Why? Okay, let's have an example. So let's say a husband who spontaneously cleaned the kitchen, put the house in order, and made everything fantastic just for you. You didn't ask him to do it. You didn't even hint to him to do it. You made no indication. He just did it on his own. Or a husband who you asked him, could you please do the dishes, dry them, put them away, wipe down the counter, and pick up the toys from the floor. You gave him an exact list.
When you ask, spontaneous.
Definitely you ask. Spontaneously, could be he was getting sick of the kitchen and he wanted everything to be clean, so he decides to go and clean it all out.
He's not
Like, it's coming from him, he wants it, like, you don't...
So which is better?
No, the
Like, to
motivation
ask
is-
your husband to buy you flowers or your husband to buy
Ask.
you flowers?
Ask.
Really?
He'll do
Yeah.
that every Shabbos.
You don't
He
think
knows
that's
you want
like
it.
so romantic that he's so that
He's not going to think
Guys
about
aren't gonna, they don't,
Won't
he
he
won't
get
know, he doesn't know. You have to spell it out.
It's in the Torah, so you could not from Torah.
wow.
Not exactly.
No.
yeah.
Moshe said think about that every Friday
And
afternoon.
that was a thing to buy.
Did you?
He's being spontaneous.
No, isn't it?
Oh my gosh.
Isn't it?
Look,
Someone's really convinced.
if he doesn't know, I won't tell him. So we would naturally think that, of course, him doing it spontaneously is much better. Well, you have to tell him, you have to spell it out to him. It depends what you're talking about. There is a place for spontaneity and for just doing something that you weren't asked. There's certainly a place for that. But you cannot belittle when you've asked for something to be done and it's done. That is him putting himself aside for you. When he does something for you, that's him expressing himself for you. But when you've asked him to do it and he does it exactly as you asked, that's him putting himself aside for you, doing it for you. And that in a relationship is very powerful. And so nothing is taken away by the fact that you asked. In fact, that adds something to it. And adds an element that you asked and you were given it. So while amongst the girls, maybe, a girlfriend should just know what you want without you being told. But for a guy to know what you want, unlikely. Unless you tell him. Spell it out, tell him. And that doesn't belittle it, doesn't make it less romantic, it makes it more beautiful. Because he's doing exactly what you asked.
Doesn't the Rebbe say that? Remember, he really does in one specific thing.
Yeah?
What about if he does exactly what you wanted him to do and you didn't ask him?
It's wonderful.
He wanted to do something else, but he didn't. Like, what if everything was the same except that you didn't ask him? Intentions and putting himself aside, and he did everything right.
That's great. That's great. But that means that somehow you asked him either directly or indirectly. It's coming from you. In other words, if he would be giving you what he thinks you should have, you won't be happy.
Yeah.
If he decides what he thinks would be a great thing to do for you, he's going to miss the mark. He's got to get it from you. When he hears that this is what you want from you, so then it's totally yours. He is yours. So here as well, saying Nasa v'nishma, who asked the Jewish people to say Nasa v'nishma? They weren't told to say that. They made that up. So it was beautiful, but that was them. But being forced into accepting the Torah, that was totally Hashem. So there, the commitment is with commitment. They're not just committing themselves, but Hashem is committing them. That's even higher. Okay. That is pretty much the crux of the Maimar. The Maimar ends, so we'll try and end it. The top of the page, Reish Pei Zayin. The Vav. The second paragraph there. So this is why the verse that this Maimar began with says, "Be joyous and sing and be joyous, daughter of Tzion." To tell us another point. That when you're the daughter, which means the one who receives the mitzvahs and fulfills them, you have to be joyous as well. The bittul that we have, that we're totally nullifying ourselves to Hashem, it's totally Hashem telling us the mitzvah, we're doing it because He made us do it, because He decided we're going to do it, it's totally coming from Him, we're completely nullifying ourselves, but it has to be with joy. Roni v'simchi, sing and be joyous. That's what the pasuk says that we started the Maimar with. Now, 1 second, we have to understand. The kasher adam who b'matzav shein lo tainig v'chayis b'torah mitzvahs. V'kiyam torah mitzvah shaloi hu rak b'derech habalas oil. If you're in a situation where doing mitzvahs is not necessarily your thing, you're not in the mood, it's just Hashem has told you to do it, so you're doing it. When you're on that level, in brackets, v'yiseir mezuz shegam hakol balas oil shaloi hi loy ba'ofen sheroitz l'kabel of oil machas shemayim. Not only that, but even your commitment to Hashem to do the mitzvahs is not because you want to be committed, it's because Hashem made you committed. The whole thing is coming from Him. When you're on that level, how can you do it with joy? How can you be enthusiastic about doing something that you're not in the mood of doing, and you're doing it only because you're forced to do it? Because it's coming from Him. If the ideal way of doing a mitzvah, if the highest way of doing a mitzvah is the fact that it's Hashem's mitzvah and He's making us doing it, and it's not us, how can you do that with joy? It's a contradiction. What is joy? What is simcha? Simcha means I'm doing that which I want. I'm enthusiastic. I'm in it. Bittul is I'm putting myself aside and doing what Hashem wants. How can you do a mitzvah with joy? Yeah, you get the question? If mitzvahs are what Hashem wants, not what we want,